Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Heroes of the Storm is the game, and these are my first impressions of the new hero, Chromie. This is a ranged assassin that will be added to Heroes of the Storm very, very soon, and I'd like to take a look to get to know her a little better, so let's dive into her basic abilities, her talents, and perhaps even learn some general strategies about how to play Chromie as well. So before we address anything else, I'd like to jump into Chromie's trait called Time Walker. You've traveled to the future and as such will learn your talents one level earlier than your teammates. So that does mean you'll get talents at level 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and 19. One level earlier than normal. As far as the influence that has on games, I think it's going to be minor. I don't think it's going to be huge. Like, having an ult at level 9 can make a difference. It could turn a team fight or catch your opponents off guard. But really just soaking and making sure that you're always ahead in XP is so much more valuable anyway that the slight advantages this offers I don't think will necessarily make Chromie an early game hero that focuses on aggression and trying to get out to an early lead any more than anybody else. So a nice little side benefit that fits her flavor and lore, but I don't think it's going to make a huge difference as far as winning games or turning fights or focusing on her talent tiers is concerned. So let's dive into the basic abilities up first. Is her Q called Sandblast. This is 20 mana, which is quite affordable. 3-second cooldown, which is incredibly short. After 1 second, fire a missile that deals 855 damage, we're at level 20, to the first enemy hero hit. So first off, I want you to notice the range on this thing. Look at this monster range. This is just ridiculous. I think one of the longest basic ability ranges in the game that's not just like global, like Tyranda's Owl, for instance. But you'll note that this does not impact siege. So no buildings can be affected, it's only enemy heroes hit, and it also has a relatively awkward load up time. So there's a channel, which means it can be canceled, and it's also pretty difficult to aim between the channel time and the travel time is not instant either. So it's going to take some practice to hit this skill shot consistently. Against a stationary target, of course, it's not too bad. But 855 damage is a nice big hit, particularly on a 3-second cooldown. So Chromie will be able to pump out some damage with Sandblast, that's for sure. And I think there are going to be some talents as well that increase both the speed and perhaps even the damage. So very core to her kit. Makes her great at poking heroes from very, very far away. So when you send this into an enemy team that might be clumped up, you're very likely to hit somebody, even if it's accidental, just because people will be running through the path, and you can do it so safely and from out of vision. You'll note that's well outside the default vision range. So you can actually just poke blindly, shooting into objectives and all kinds of stuff. Pretty nifty ability. Up next is her W called Dragon's Breath. This has a more expensive mana cost at 70 and a much longer cooldown at 14 seconds. You fire a blast into the air that lands after 1.5 seconds. So here is again the delay, pretty substantial delay. So another ability that's kind of hard to aim compared to instant AoEs. It does 965 damage to all enemies in that area, and enemies cannot see where the blast will land. So normally with something like a blizzard or a flame strike, you might see the circle appear on the ground to indicate that there is an AoE coming there. In this case, they can't see that, so you can do this totally blindly. And again, it's a very long range, well outside of standard vision range. So super long range ability that can also be used against fort structures, minions, and so on. And it hits very hard too. 965 damage is certainly nothing to scoff at. So you can do stuff like this all day, even against towers in the early game. And at level 20, of course, we're shredding towers. They won't be quite this impacted at level 1, but still does give you a lot of poke potential with very little risk, which is important because you'll note Chromie's health is quite low at 2500. I think that's the lowest for a full hero that's not a Lost Viking or a Murky or an Abathur. So very punishing if you're caught, but with all these ranges it's not hard to get caught. The cooldown here is pretty punishing. So it's not going to be like you can do this always and forever, but when it lands, it's definitely going to make a big impact. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to her E called Time Trap. 50 mana ability with an 18-second cooldown, so very long. Place a time trap that arms and stealths after 2 seconds. The first enemy hero to touch it will be put into stasis for 2 seconds. Only one trap can exist at once. So this is really, I think, Chromie's way to protect herself while she's standing over here doing all kinds of long-range poke. She can set up a trap so that when that enemy butcher or thrall or whoever it might be comes to kill you, they land in the stasis and get trapped for 2 seconds, and we can probably trap our good friend Arthas in here to see this thing in action. Yeah, so he killed it. Mind you, it doesn't activate for 2 seconds. So at that point it's stealth, so they won't be able to see it, but if they kill it before then, they actually will be able to avoid it. So you have to be careful casting it. It's really more of a trap, not an active ability you drop right in the middle of a fight. But that stasis, you can't attack them while they're stasis. They don't take damage. It's a full-on stasis effect, so it's not like a lockdown stun to kill them. It's really more of a keep them busy while you get away type ability, or perhaps even isolate them so that your team or you can focus on another target in the meantime. So pretty cool. I think it's important because Chromie otherwise doesn't have any mobility options. She can't use escapes to dive out of a fight. So she's going to have to be very careful and smart about how she places time traps and how she uses them. I mean, you can also set them up on objectives and use them as vision in a sense, because it does provide a small vision window, as you'll notice. So I think a lot of different ways to use that creatively and impactfully. It's just going to take a lot of practice and foresight to do so. So I want to go ahead and jump into her heroic abilities before we look into the other talents in more detail. Up first is Slowing Sands. This is a nifty, essentially a channeled ability in the sense that it lasts forever as long as you have the mana to keep it active, and it does cost, I believe it's 4 mana per second. So her natural regen kind of just keeps up here. I mean, obviously it would be punishing if you're using other abilities, but it's almost free at level 20 in a sense. But this Slowing Sands, that giant circle you just saw, slows enemies for up to 50% after 5 seconds. So initially it slows for much less than 50%, and as time passes, that slow increases. So it can be a pretty substantial lockdown and essentially a zoning tool. If you don't want somebody coming through here, you want to buy yourself time, then you can place the circle here and keep them from approaching more quickly to give yourself some leeway and some slack on, maybe perhaps hitting some siege damage over here. You can also use it to block off fleeing enemies. If say you're chasing them down the lane and they're about to escape into their gate, you can place the slowing winds inside the gate so that you're able to do stuff like hit them with your Q and your W. Plus, slows make it much easier to hit skill shots, because these are very difficult skill shots to hit thanks to the delays. So when an enemy is substantially slowed, it will make your Q and your W a lot more reliable too. So I like what it has to offer. I'm not sure it's the best option though, so let's take a look also at the alternative level 9 heroic. This is Temporal Loop. And this one is a targeted ability, 60 mana, cooldown with 70 seconds, which isn't all that bad. Choose an enemy hero, and after 3 seconds, they will teleport back to the location where you cast Temporal Loop on them. So we can see this in action with our buddy Arthas once he pops out. Long range on this, by the way, very long range, so you can do this from safety. He's standing here. We want him to move. Go ahead and move, Arthas. He's not going to move much. You kind of saw it in action there. Maybe we need to do some damage to Arthas first and trick him into running away, and then we'll see it in action. Okay, so Arthas is going to probably run. Yeah, we saw he actually hit our trap there and canceled the effect. Arthas, you're a real jerk. Alright, he's trying to run away. You can see the animation here. It's going to pull him back to that animated spot after a 3-second delay. So probably not the best best example to show that off, but I think you get the general idea. So essentially you use this, if they're running away, if they're about to make an escape, you can cast it on them from a very long range, pull them back to where they were, finish them up with some more damage or with your teammates' damage as well. You could even use it if somebody's chasing you to cast it on them, and if they keep coming, then it'll pull them back to where they were 3 seconds ago in the chase, so probably allow you to escape to safety. I kind of think this has some application. Like it's really good for locking down kills. You can use it kind of almost like a reverse tracer recall in many ways against the enemies to punish their positioning. Any mistakes they make where they might step forward just a little bit too far forward before their team kind of regresses, you can trap them in that spot for your team to blow up. It's got utility. I'm not sure though that it has more utility than does Slowing Sands. Slowing Sands just, even though it's only a slow and doesn't do damage, it can just zone so much and help you hit skill shots so much and set your team up positionally in very strong ways. So I think both are good. I think I'm leaning a little more towards Slowing Sands right now, but I'll certainly have to see each of these in action. I haven't taken Chromie out into a game. These are truly my first impressions, so only time will tell, but I don't think either one is a strong favorite necessarily, or neither is either one really bad. So now that we've seen all the abilities, I want to go ahead and jump into Chromie's talents, starting, of course, at level 1. These are not cost reduced. These are not level reduced, I should say. These are truly level 1, of course. Up first is Compounding Ether. After hitting 25 heroes with Sandblast, increase its damage by 100. So this does 855 damage right now. So that would take it up to 955 damage at level 20, which is, more than a 10% gain, which isn't bad at all. But keep in mind that if you hit that earlier in the game, say you hit 25 heroes by level 5, which is possible, right? Because this has a 3-second cooldown. You will be spamming it in the early game and probably getting a lot of free shots in lane and the first objective. So 100 damage increase at level 5 is going to be huge. In fact, we can probably even see exactly what that would be. At level 5, it hits for 475. So that's greater than a 20% increase at level 5, which is much more substantial. So the earlier you hit this, the more rewarding it's going to be through the early to mid game, and could give you a lot of potential to pull ahead at that point. Now, it's going to give you diminishing returns later in the game as the base damage on this increases. And hero health pools increase. They'll do a smaller and smaller amount of damage, but if you're quick with this one, it might give you a nice advantage that also synergizes with the rest of your earlier talents and allows your team to steamroll through a game in the early portion. There's also Deep Breathing, another quest talent. Every time Dragon's Breath, that is our W, hits a hero, increase its damage by 2 up to 50. So very similar in mechanics to the first option, but this one also has a full-on reward. Well, I guess they both actually have rewards, but after hitting 25 heroes, increase its damage by an additional 150%, and also increase your sight radius by 100%. So that is huge. I mean, doubling the sight radius makes you see halfway across the map. I feel like this is just unbelievably overpowered, because you're also getting 50 damage all the way up the quest and 150 damage at the reward for the same amount of heroes hit. So that's 200 total bonus damage on an ability that has very similar damage numbers, so it's far more substantial proportionally. And then you get the sight radius increase too. I think the challenge here, though, is that Sandblast in Quest 1 has a 3-second cooldown. Dragon's Breath has a 14-second cooldown. So it's going to take a lot longer to hit 25 heroes, unless you hit 2 or 3 per time, of course, since it is an AoE. If you do hit 2 or 3 people every time, it's going to be okay, but otherwise it's going to take a very long time. I'm going to have to test this in a game to see how quickly and how regularly you hit the upgrades here, because that bonus damage and that much poke and siege damage extra as well is great. Plus it does increase along the way, so you start to gain the damage immediately, not just at the reward point, unlike this one. So I feel like Deep Breathing is really solid for a talent. Moving on to Time Walker's Pursuit. Gathering a regen globe increases mana regen. After gathering 15 globes, you gain 5% ability power. So, if she's mana starved, that seems like it could be pretty solid, actually. She might be mana starved too, because even though this is only 20 mana, you can't cast it every 3 seconds. So you're going to be burning through mana quite quickly. The 5% ability power too is nice. It actually is almost competitive. Remember, we said this one's about 10 to 20%. This one would be about the same, but smaller as you go. So just a base 5% ability power doesn't lose too much damage to these, and you also gain the mana regen as well. So potentially this one gives you just as much damage output if it enables you to spam abilities more regularly. And 15 globes really isn't that hard to get. It's not going to be right away, but on certain maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen in particular, you could get tons of globes very quickly and start to benefit very fast. There's also Peer into the Future. This is an active talent. Activate to reveal the targeted area for 2 seconds. Enemies seen are revealed for 4 seconds. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. It's a very large area. The dragon flies overhead, as we saw in the Chromie teaser. Very short vision ability. Reasonable cooldown at 25 seconds, but I don't know, it's good for your abilities like this to target really far away stuff that's not in your vision, but I think the other 3 talents are all so good that Peer into the Future just won't ever make sense. So we'll go ahead and pick Deep Breathing right now because it just seems OP, and we'll go from there. Moving on to level 3, we have Piercing Sands. Sandblast will now hit the first 2 heroes in its path, so this really just gives your Q piercing. That's actually potentially okay, just because in team fights, if people are clumped up in smaller groups, 3 or 4, hiding behind a gate together, there are chances you'll hit 2 people. I don't think it's going to happen consistently, but it will occasionally land, which an extra 900 poke damage like that is nothing to scoff at. Not sure it's the strongest talent, though. There's also Bronze Talons. Increase your basic attack range by 35%. Using Sandblast increases the damage of your next basic attack by 250%. I just don't know that you ever want to go with basic attacks as Chromie. You're so susceptible. Look how much longer your attack... This is my auto attack range, right? How much longer my poke range is for my 2 abilities. I just think you're not going to want to be in auto attack range very often. Because you're really going to be spamming your Q almost as your auto attack from farther away. Occasionally you'll dive in for autos, sure, but it just seems like you'll be far too susceptible to this health tool to ever get close. So I don't know that Bronze Talent will give you any advantage, even though it does increase your auto attack range. I guess let's see the range increase. It's still so much shorter than is our poke. So I don't know. It's not terrible probably, but it doesn't stand out to me as fantastic. We also have Enveloping Assault. Increase Dragon's Breath radius by 25%. So here's the normal radius. If you want to go ahead and memorize that in your eyeballs. There's the normal radius. One more time. Now let's take a look at Dragon's Breath. It's bigger, right? But I don't know. It's not that much bigger. The difference in that hitting, an extra hero is very rarely going to make a difference at all, and it's still not big enough. I guess you can pretty much zone out the entire gate, which isn't bad, but I'm not sure it's worth it. It does have some synergies with our level 1 talent, but I don't know. Now that I think about it, maybe Bronze Talent is actually just the most solid because it allows you to auto attack more safely, and every 3 seconds you get a huge boost to your auto attacks as well. Let's actually take a look at what that auto attack damage bonus is. So we do 160 normally. After we Sandblast, we hit for 560. So actually 300 damage is not bad at all, but you will note that the channel here breaks your auto attacks, so it's still pretty good. I'm actually going to pick Bronze Talons despite trash talking it originally. Up next is level 6 talent with Mobius Loop. Reduces Dragon's Breath mana cost and cooldown by 50%, but also reduces its damage by 25%. So this is 70 and 14 right now, and as I said, that's pretty expensive mana cost and very long cooldown. So when we take this, it drops to I guess it's not showing it, but yeah, it did drop it to 7. So, and also we appear to be spending about 35 mana. So that's right. As far as how good that is, the damage reduction does hurt, but still, I mean, it's still hitting for what? 700 plus damage, 724. Certainly still a pretty rough ability, and 7 seconds is spammable, and that also synergizes with deep breathing. If you are able to get these out quickly, you're going to be able to gain that damage back pretty fast from your reward, and then gain that sight radius increase too. So I can envision a build where Mobius Loop and deep breathing do go together. Because remember, you're only losing 25% of your damage, so that's more actual total damage because you're able to do this twice as often. So it's technically a damage increase on this ability, just less burst damage all at once when you need it. So there are certainly upsides and downsides. Also at level 6, there's Dragon's Eye. Dragon's Breath does 25% more damage to enemies in the center. So right now there's no center indicator on that circle. But let's take Dragon's Eye and see. Oh, there's a very tiny indicator in the center. That seems like it's going to be hard to hit. It does work on towers, though. So, I don't know. That might actually be a really good siege tool just to hit towers even harder. I don't mind that at all. The occasional hero you hit is also going to be punished very hard from 1200 damage that they can't see, predict, or escape. So I kind of like that as well. That's going to be a tough choice. There's also Chrono Sickness, reduces time traps cooldown by 50%. After the stasis ends, the enemy is also slowed by 40% for 3 seconds. So that has a 18-second cooldown that'll cut it to 9 seconds. I think that's actually really good. Not necessarily that you'll be spamming time traps, but you never know when you might need it. Actually, I want to test something. I think the way this works right now, yeah, you do... Oh, we have cooldowns on, so that won't teach us. I'm just curious how long the cooldown is when it's already up. If you're able to cast it again, or if you have to wait the full... You do have to wait the full 9 seconds. So in other words, if you want to move it, if it hasn't been activated and you want to move it, it still does have the full cooldown. So this could help in instances where you're moving around a lot and have to move your time trap. But overall, I still don't think that this is the best talent. The slow is also good. I should note that it's pretty substantial. If you do trap the person, you're much more likely to be able to kill them or escape from them than if they're just in stasis for 2 seconds. But I think the 2-second stasis is more than enough to get away and set yourself up for better poke. So I think Mobius Loop and Dragon's Eye feel better to me. And I almost like Mobius Loop because I do just like spamming abilities from far range. So that probably suits my playstyle the most. And so far, all of my things do give me increased range or spam ability. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and choose Slowing Sands. I think it's just the more consistent and reliable of the two. Again, it's going to require a lot of testing to say for sure, but my instincts lead me that direction. So let's move on to Chromie's level 12 talents. Up first is Bye Bye. Reduces the cast time of your Hearthstone by 75% and is not interrupted by taking damage. So, alright, let's look at a normal Hearthstone here. Alright, quite a long cast time and a very cool animation, by the way. Now let's take the talent and see how that... Oh, okay. Even cooler animation. You get some awesome wings. And as you can see, that channel's very quick. And apparently, you're not able to be interrupted, so it's guaranteed to go off as long as you live. Opponents could still kill you. You're not invulnerable. But the channel is uninterruptible. So, okay, that's like a super get out of jail free card. You've got your E to lock somebody down too, but this one means you're practically 97% of the time guaranteed to get away safely. The problem, I think, with Bye Bye, perhaps, is that if you get away safely, what did you accomplish? You're so far from the fight, you don't have any like huge mobility options to get right back in. No globals like a Falset or a Brightwing or a Dahaka. So you're still just kind of stuck. So you might have saved a death. I mean, I guess, admittedly, hearthing to the base is always better than dying for a minute, because you still got to run back after you're dead for a minute. So that actually makes some sense as sort of a super ice block. But the problem is like it's a last-ditch thing. In the middle of a team fight, hearthing away doesn't help your team. It's just, yeah, you might live, but then you just doom your team as well. So I don't know that I totally love it. Let's see what else she has here at 12. There's also Reaching Through Time. Increases Sandblast and Dragon Breath's range by 25%. Okay, so let's actually just go ahead and take a look at that. Here's the default range. We'll stand on the bush here in the corner. We can go to this line here on our Sandblast. Our W will be exactly the same. So, I mean, absurdly long range to start, right? I doubt we need much more than this, but let's go ahead and see. Alright, so we can actually get to the tower from here. This won't do damage, but our W certainly will. That's just really stupidly long range. I think it's almost overkill. It'll be hard to get vision from that far away without some talents or teammates. I just don't know if I like this. I think it just feels like overkill. Like she's already gotten so many different range options that this one is just too much. So there's also at level 12 timeout. Activate to place yourself in stasis and gain invulnerability for up to 7 seconds. It's a very long ice block, and it can be reactivated to end the effect early. So, haha, that's cool looking. Not only the effects on the side, but her actual animation is really cool too. That's really neat. So you can end that early as well. 7 seconds is just a lifetime. I don't know if this is good. I mean, I think this is probably the best, but I don't know if it's that good necessarily. I mean, Ice Block has proven to be a successful option for other heroes like Jaina and Malfurion and so on. So I guess timeout probably makes a lot of sense. The real problem is that if you're in the back of the fight and lobbing bombs at people around here, right, doing your Chromie thing, and a butcher approaches you and he somehow misses the trap, and you have to ice block, you're gonna have to somehow alert your team. I mean, yeah, you can danger ping yourself and stuff and like call for help, and I guess 7 seconds is long enough for your team to actually assist you on that ping. So I don't know, maybe timeout's good. Of course, it's also great for just avoiding the unavoidable AoE that you can't get out of because you don't have mobility options. So when Nova drops that bomb on your head, you've got the timeout option. 60 seconds cooldown is long, but it's not like punishingly long. I don't know, timeout probably actually feels the best of all the talents here at 12, as far as I'm concerned. So let's go ahead and move on to rank 15, or excuse me, level 15. Up first is Shifting Sands. Hitting an enemy hero with Sandblast increases your ability power by 10% for the next 10 seconds. This bonus can be stacked up to 50%. Whoa. And the duration is refreshed whenever you damage enemy heroes with Sandblast. That sounds kind of crazy, right? 50% ability power is stupid when she already hits like a truck. So, alright, you hit an enemy hero and you get a stack. We'll probably see a notification here. There's our stack. It's counting down. That's a very long countdown, especially with the short cooldowns of this ability in general. So it's not hard. As long as you're hitting your skill shots, it's really not hard to maintain this, right? So we get to 5 stacks. We're actually hitting for 1,200 damage per Q every 3 seconds. Oh my goodness. It's 1283 actually. Gosh. That is frighteningly scary. And you can keep that up basically forever because you refresh the duration every time you hit, and it just stays at 5 stacks. And that's long enough that throughout a team fight, it's going to be amazing. Now, it will be kind of hard, I think, to keep up in between little skirmishes and fights and engagements and objectives, because it's dropping off pretty quickly. And it does go to 0, right? It doesn't go to 4. So it's not like you have 50 seconds. It's all or none. You got to build up the stacks. But I don't know, if you're poking people, especially if you have like the piercing talents, I think it's at, yeah, the piercing talents at 3, where you hit 2 heroes, I presume that actually gives you 2 stacks quite quickly. So That's frightening. Even if you just get 1 or 2 stacks, it's still like a 20% ability power upgrade. And it says ability power. It's not just on your Q, so it's actually also impacting your W stacks as well. You'll note it hit for 965, but when we get stacks here, we'll go ahead and reduce cooldowns to get some crazy stacks. spam Chromie here. So we went from 965 to 1448, right? So all your abilities are actually impacted, which makes it even better. Shifting Sand seems just absolutely overpowered. There's also Fast Forward. If Sandblast travels... let's go ahead and pick the talent. If Sandblast travels at least 75% of its base distance and hits a hero, its cooldown is reduced to 1 second. We have cooldowns on, so... This just seems way too gimmicky, right? You get a nice little line there to indicate the distance, but this is a lot to manage, and the benefit doesn't even seem that positive. Yeah, you could literally spam all day. This is legit. We have cooldowns on, so this is actually how fast you could spam it. I guess that's pretty cool, but I don't think it outweighs the raw damage output, because there's a lot of conditions to make that happen. You got to hit somebody first. Has to be far away, so you're committing to positioning. It's just too conditional. There's also Quantum Overdrive. 30-second cooldown. Activate to increase your ability power by 25% for 10 seconds. Ah. Okay, so half as cool as Shifting Sands. 25 versus 50, but you get to use it anytime you want. Anytime you want, which is really nice. So, like, if you're desperately trying to do something right now, you can pop that Quantum Overdrive and have it ready, where Shifting Sands does actually require you to build up over time. So this is kind of the bursty option in a way. You can guarantee the extra 25 right away. And it honestly has 10-second uptime, so it's got like a 33% uptime, right? It's a 30-second cooldown, so you are only off of it for 20 seconds at a time. Fights will last longer than 10 seconds, but, you know, it'll be up for every fight, definitely. Maybe even twice in mini fights. So it's kind of intriguing. I think they're both pretty good, Shifting Sands and Quantum Overdrive. My hunch tells me that it could be comp dependent. So if the enemy team has a comp that requires you to do a lot of burst damage, or your comp supports that, where you're trying to blow people up who get stunned or something, the guaranteed bonus from Quantum Overdrive might be better. But if it's like long-range poke battles over objectives like on Cursed Hollow, for instance, then Shifting Sands might give you what you need, like more consistent, higher damage over a longer period of time. So I like Shifting Sands a lot, but Quantum Overdrive, kind of leaning that way. So let's move on to level 19. Up first is Pocket of Time. Removes Slowing Sands mana cost and increases the slow from 50 to 70%. So 70% slow is devastating. That's an incredible lockdown, and will allow you to hit skill shots very easily and blow people up who get trapped in the sand. So I like that. Plus, there's no mana cost. That actually means you can keep that little circle slow up. There's, let's go ahead and pick it, I guess. You can keep your sands up forever. They don't cost mana, so you just get to cast it every 5 seconds, wherever you want, right? Which is a pretty cool tool. So it's basically just always around doing stuff. Getting in the way, zoning, setting up huge damage combos inside of it. I kind of like that. It's kind of a neat idea. There's also Loophole. Temporal Loop hits all enemy heroes near your initial target. I don't know that that's actually very good. Let's see what the word near means first off, if we can. Let's get Arthas in here. Oh, actually, we don't even need him. It just shows you the circle. Okay, so that's the circle. If you hit one person in the middle, because it's targeted, then everybody in that circle will also be affected and pulled back to that point. I don't really know if that's good. Sometimes you want just one person, right, to isolate them from their team. If you pull back the whole enemy team, I don't know that you're doing a lot. I don't know. It could be good, but it actually makes the ability a little bit harder to use and figure out, and the timing a little more difficult too. So I don't know that that's really all that impactful. Like if a whole enemy team is fleeing and clumped up, yeah, you could get a few, but how often does that happen? Again, I think it's just too conditional to be good. There's also past and future me. Let's check that out too. This one reads, after casting Sandblast, leave an echo of yourself behind. The next time you cast Sandblast, the echo also casts an untalented Sandblast that does 50% damage. Okay, cool. So we leave a little sandy Chromie here. We got Sandy and Chromie. And every time you cast it. Alright, cool. So it just kind of targets where you're targeting. You can create the line intersection by moving your cursor here. It's not hard. That's actually pretty neat. If you go with a Sandblast build, which I think will be possibly viable, then this one seems like it'd be good. 50% damage is not a ton, but you are like creating just chaos and you're manipulating angles and just sending these things into team fights. I think with a piercing talent, it'd be good because essentially you could hit 3 heroes per Q. It'd be hard to do, but it's possible, right? The Sandy one is untalented, so it would not pierce, but still would give you like extra just chaos targeting here. You're bound to hit something when you send this many things into a fight, right? So who knows? Plus, I guess if it does half damage, that's a lot of damage if you hit one person with both somehow. And you can kind of control where you leave this thing too, right? So you can set up kind of traps, or you can really think about that. So it adds some positioning depth and makes your opponents consider your positioning as well. And you can maybe even trick people to make them think you're in this bush, for instance. You know, who knows? I don't know yet, but it feels like there's ways to use this pretty creatively. There's also Underhall Anomaly. You gain 3 charges of Time Trap. You can have 3 active at once. When your cooldown finishes, you gain 3 charges at once. Okay, so this basically just gives you like the ability to set up little bombs of traps where you create little zoned off areas with 3 traps right in a little circle and stay behind them, and you're practically guaranteed to protect yourself from any encroaching enemies. And you can move those as well because the cooldown is 18 seconds. So every 18 seconds you basically get 3 new ones. It's not a like a cycling cooldown. It says it's all at once. So every 18 seconds you get to set up your little base again, right? 3 new traps and go from there. That's pretty cool. I like that, but I kind of think Pocket of Time and Past and Future Me feel better than Underhall Anomaly or Loophole. So I don't know. I like Pocket of Time, but I think Q build is possible, so we'll see. Alright, so those are my Chromie talents. I don't really have a build idea just yet. I need to play her first and feel this stuff out, see what's up. But I think overall, very interesting talent assortment here and some pretty viable options. So Chromie looks to be quite strong. The numbers are there. She's got some CC options. She's got super range, which is very helpful for characters to have. And just a little bit of utility as well. So I think she has all the pieces to be a pretty good hero in the Nexus. And I can't actually wait to see her because she's super cute. And I love Warcraft characters like this. And I think she packs a big punch despite being a tiny little gnome. So that'll do it for my first impressions video of Chromie. Thanks so much for stopping by and spending some time getting familiar with this hero. And hopefully I'll see you in the Nexus before too long. Until next time, game on.